Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go first on this, only because you've come back to judo a little bit later.
Yeah.
And I think attitudes have changed massively in the last few years. Yeah. But I remember when BJJ first started getting a bit of traction in the UK, I mean proper traction, not like in sort of the 90s where there was like, you could count on one hand how many black belts there were. I'm talking about the last sort of like 10 years. And judo was proper looking down its nose at BJJ. Let's get it right. You know, it was like, oh, look at those, you know, floor huggers, and all it is Nawaza and that. And
basically just judo.
Yeah, that's all you got, you know. And it was from people, and I was like that, if I'm honest. And it was from people that had never done BJJ. It was from people that looked at it from afar. You know, they saw the gis with all the stripes and I mean, let's get it right. Some of the gis in jiu-jitsu are nuts, aren't they? But they'd look at all that individuality, if you like. Yeah. I mean, good God, it took half the judo community ages to get used to the idea of wearing a blue kit, let alone having like some people got pink and purple.
I wasn't allowed one.
I've seen someone come on with a full-on camo. It's ridiculous. So the BJJ and judo it was like I say, there was a lot of judo, and on them forums in those early days, the sniping back and forth was ridiculous. And I remember my first sort of idea of that crossover was when I used to start seeing people wearing rash guards. And I used to go, what are you wearing a t-shirt for? Only girls wear t-shirts in judo. You know, that was that attitude. But now, I wouldn't dream of going on a mat without a rash guard on.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way, especially with kids. Don't ask me why, there's no way I'd go on a judo mat, teach kids or fight anyone bare-chested. Yeah. I don't know why. It's not like you're getting your bits out, is it? But you know, jiu-jitsu,
absolutely.
There is nothing
worse. But it's not nice when you've got a sweaty man in your face. It's not nice.
Someone's man boobs across you. No, it's not, is it? So that's for me when I started seeing a little bit of that. And then, if I'm honest, it wasn't until I went to BJJ myself. And on the face of it, if you look at it, you think, oh yeah, it's groundwork. But it ain't.
No.
And you know, and I think that you have to go and do it, and you have to experience it to appreciate the difference, the nuance, and enjoy it for what it is. Yeah. You know, I think
it's that. Well, I mean, we've said this before, I think, but it's chess versus checkers. They look the same when you stand back and you go, it's on a board, it's got squares, you move in pieces. But one of them is you're planning so many steps ahead, and the other one's explosive, and you're going to try and knock it out in one.
See, I never would have gone down the checkers chess. I'd have gone down the NFL rugby union. But you fill your boots. You can tell you wouldn't have been my friend at school. That's a fact. But I know what you mean. It does. If you look at it, it looks the same.
Yeah, I mean,
but it ain't.
My first experience of BJJ was the first night that I came down the judo club. And the guy that I trained with, we both came on as white belts. And I think his name was Dan or something. But he was a blue or purple belt at jiu-jitsu. So we're there, I'm trying throws that I haven't done in 25 years. And sort of going, I can remember bits of this. And then he said, do you want a little scrap on the ground? And he absolutely annihilated me. And I went, what the hell's going on? And then I had a roll with Rob Connor.
Yeah,
and he beat the hell out of me.
You do know Rob Connor is one of the early days old school jiu-jitsu black belts.
And I was a yellow belt at the time, and I went, I'm never gonna have a fight with him again, because he choked me and armbarred me from every single. And then when I first went down to RGA, and I was like, you know, he kind of it's that whole thing of you're learning all this new stuff, and as much as it looks similar, it's so different. But I think the fact is there's things that you can use in each of them that are useful. There's techniques that cross over, and there's techniques that just don't cross over. You know.
For me, it's not either or. It's not either or. I mean, I think the biggest difference I've found is in judo, you could have 2 or 3 techniques if you're lucky that you're going to be good at.
Yeah.
Most people, what's your favourite throw? Why? Because most people only have one throw.
Yeah, because they can do it on most people.
Yeah, let's get it right.
They've learned it from every entry.
But there are players, don't get me wrong, that can hit you with 3 or 4 different ones. But when you're fighting in randori, when you're fighting in contest, and you know you're fighting someone, they're trying to throw you at the same time. the difficulty in doing that, the difficulty in getting that throw off as someone's attacking you, it's so hard. And you tend to have your go-tos. What are the throws? I mean, I could name players. I won't do it now, it's boring, but I could name players and tell you what their favourite throws are.
Yeah.
Because it's obvious, because they're the ones they always do. Whereas I find in jiu-jitsu, is you can find yourself a favourite technique. Let's say, for example, you're in side control, you move round, you get the bread cutter choke, right? So you've found yourself a little sequence, and that's your favourite go-to. You perfect that, and then you start to learn something else. So then all of a sudden, you know, you're going mount, and then you're going for a cross choke or something, and that becomes your favourite one for a little while, and you forget the other one you did before, and then you move on to something else. And I think, you know, Dan Lewis once said it to me. He said, I end up forgetting what I used to know and then going back to it again and starting all the way through again. And I think the difference in jiu-jitsu is there is the ability to do far more techniques on the ground than you can standing in judo. And that's the one thing I will say. I think that feeling of really throwing somebody in judo, there is nothing quite like it.
It's quite nice when you throw someone in jiu-jitsu though, because they're normally terrible.
I'm not going to say it, but you do have it. I mean, let's get it right. In jiu-jitsu, they do not train stand-up.
No.
And that's one of the reasons why we do sort of videos, is that we want some of our pals in jiu-jitsu to have a better stand-up game. And let's get it right. We're looking at people who are white belts, blue belts. This isn't for, you know, Keenan Cornelius or any of John Danaher's death squad. We're talking about blue belts and white belts, old farts like me and him in our 40s that just want to enjoy ourselves at a local comp and do okay, rather than just pull guard. You know, we don't want to do that. So I think that there's an awful lot you can gain. But I personally, I found that as a judo player coming into jiu-jitsu, I had a head start. Of course I did. You know, I was better than the white belt that I just walked in off the street. Fifth dan in judo, you'd like to think I'll be a bit, you know, be better than that, but it'd only get you so far. You do all right against maybe white belts, blue belts, the occasional purples, but let's get it right. If I wanted to progress any further, I couldn't keep doing judo. No. And I'll never forget the very first night I did it, I had somebody in Kezagatami, and I'm just sat there like, you know, look at me, I'm in Kezagatami, and Dan just walked up to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and he went, mate, you're not winning. You're just resting. You can't just sit there. You've got to do something else. And another first, I'll never forget this in my first session as well. And this is the difference between judo and jiu-jitsu. In judo, people have no problem tapping in newaza. So if you feel your arm going, you'll tap. That's probably a good thing. Less injuries. There isn't really that culture of not wanting to tap. Whereas in jiu-jitsu,
pass out before you tap out.
Yeah, it's like being thrown for ippon, isn't it? In judo, no one wants to get thrown for ippon. Yeah. You will try anything to spin out of that throw. You might even break your collarbone doing it, but you'd never want to get thrown for ippon, will you? But it's the same in jiu-jitsu. It's I don't want to tap out.
I don't want to tap.
And I remember my first night again, and I was on with Brazilian Daniel. For those of you that go to RGA Bucks, you know who I'm talking about, who is a black belt from Brazil, so he is going to be special. And he had me in mount, which is Tachi Shiogatami. And he was crushing me. And I tapped. And he just looked at me and went, mate, you don't tap to mount. And I thought, no, I can't. This is killing me. And I thought, what his point was, mate, you cannot tap that easy. No. Yeah, I'll move off, but... and I thought, okay. And that was a bit of a learning curve. Jiu-jitsu, I think, has also prolonged my grappling career a bit longer.
Yeah.
I think that you can...
It's not as hard on the body.
It's not as hard on the body.
No.
And, you know, you can get a bloke in his 40s off the street, put a kit on them and say, right, have a roll around on the floor. And they can feel like it's competitive, even if it isn't. Yeah. Even if the person that's rolling with them is actually just playing with them. They ain't going to know much of a difference, really. No. Can't do that in judo. No. It takes years to get... I think it takes years to get the timing right. You can show anyone a throw, but...
It's a very different ball game practicing a throw. Someone who's letting you throw them to throwing someone who doesn't want you to throw them, who's also trying to throw you. Whereas you'll catch someone with a choke, you'll catch someone with an arm bar, you know.
But if you look at, and I think some of the jiu-jitsu competitions that I've done, I haven't done many, to be fair, but whenever I've done them, I've always started off with a throw, which has landed me every single time in a plumb position to win. And you cannot ignore your stand-up game. Yeah. You know what? You pull guard. For me, it's
It's almost 50-50.
It's 50-50. If you've got a good guard game, fair enough.
But if they've got a good guard passing game, then
exactly. So if you've got some takedowns or some throws, it's such an advantage just to set you up. It may not, you're only going to get 2 points. It's a shame when you've dumped someone for 10. In judo terms, you've thrown them for an ippon, it's like a win.
Yeah.
In jiu-jitsu terms, 2 points.
Yeah.
You get more for getting your leg out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But for me, we have waffled on there a bit. I think judo versus BJJ debate.
Do them both.
Do them both.
Train them both.
Train both. Be good at both. Be an all-round grappler. Be good at standing. Good at groundwork. And you are seeing it far more at top-level judo, I think. I was watching a young lad, Luke Davis, just last week. He's an under-8, he's a cadet, and he was fighting in a European event, and he did the best triangle from guard, where they're in between his legs, he's whacked the triangle on, and normally the referees in Britain, they can't recognise that as a judo technique. They're like, mate. But obviously in international events, they can see what's going on. Yeah. They allowed the progression, and it was a beautiful tap. And it just goes to show for me where you can get jiu-jitsu working great at top-level judo. So do them both, enjoy them both.
There's another thing as well that, if you've got a good ground game, you can beat someone that you've got no right to beat.
What, standing, you mean?
Yeah,
in judo.
In judo. Yeah. So if you're fighting someone judo and you're not good enough to beat them standing, but they're not good enough on the ground.
I've got a story about that. This person will remain nameless. I won't say who it was, but I went out to Northern Ireland once, and a couple of years ago, they had this thing in judo where it was unlimited wazaris.
Right.
It was a ridiculous idea, and they got rid of it quite quickly. He got thrown for 4 wazaris, right? And 3 of them were definitely ippons. And when the referee didn't just call ippon, I'm like, mate, do me. He's going to get hurt if you don't pull a stop to this. But guess what? Rolled him on the ground, got an arm lock and won. And I thought, you've got no right. You were thrown 4 times flat on your back. Yeah. And that was the problem with that rule. Yeah. And they got rid of that rule. But yeah, you're right. He had no right to win that fight. In fact, now he'd have lost it 3 times over.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, there we go.
Let's go back to a few more questions.
Right. We've got a couple more. Do we still compete?
Do we still compete? Let's go with that one. Right, do we still compete? Yes and no.
Yes and no.
So, I do compete in BJJ from time to time because I think that I haven't proved myself in it. So I feel I have to. I don't anymore in judo, and there's a reason for that. Right, so I feel that I've done everything. I don't need to prove anything to anyone in judo. I've done it for a long time. The last competition I did in judo was the Southend International, and I have never in my life have I felt pressure like it. I had my kids, I had the judo kids, I had the judo parents, I had all the coaches from all the other clubs. And what was worse, I had all the referees and all the officials.
All the ones that you've shouted at.
Yeah, I had everybody watching, and it was awful. I will say I won, but after that, but you can only go one way from
Absolutely.
There. So I thought, right, that's it. I'm retiring on a win. That's it. I'm done. So I don't compete in judo. I'm too old, and my ego won't handle it if I lose. I think in jiu-jitsu, I don't care. I'll give it a go. I do get incredibly nervous. I know you do. So perhaps share that, because I think that's quite good, because people our age that do it,
I mean,
it's nerve-wracking, isn't it?
I get horrendous anxiety before I do any comps. Like literally the night before, I can't sleep. I feel sick in the morning, and I don't care if I win or lose. I just don't want to not feel like I've done well. When I started doing judo, I had no intention of competing whatsoever. And then it was like I got to orange belt or something, and I think you said to Carl about there's a Q grade comp, and Carl was like, "Do you want to do it?" Oh. And then I did it, and I got a bronze. I think Carl got silver. And after that, I was like, "No, I'm gonna keep pushing myself to do it because I wanted to get my down grade. I wanted to get my black, and I knew I'd have to compete for that. And and I did, and that was great."
And I think that's important, by the way. I think it's important to do those Q grade events, so that when you go to fight,
prepare for
100%. Yeah. So when you go to fight for your black belt, you've got that experience behind you. Yeah. And I know you can do the technical route for judo, and I'm not against that for certain people.
I wanted to do it in a lineup. I wanted to do it the way I did it.
I think that if
even getting the points, I think, there's, yes, you're still achieving the same thing. I think for adults it's harder to do that because there's not as many competitions as there is for the younger ones, Yeah. And but for me the traditional way to do it is get a lineup. So to do it on that was wicked. Jiu-jitsu, I've done a couple of competitions. I want to do more. I just keep hurting myself and sort of not being
it's funny
fit enough. So
it's a funny one
fingers and arms and bits and pieces keep hanging off. And
I know what you mean.
But when I start competing again at jiu-jitsu, my aim to try and get over my anxiety is to try and compete every month. I want to try and do one a month to start getting to the point where it just feels natural to do and not like it's anything.
Well, that's
big.
what they do in Brazil. I think they do like nearly every week.
Yeah.
So what I do like about BJJ for competitions is that they do that thing with the age.
The subcategories.
Yeah, you've got age, you've got grade, and you've got the colour belt.
Yeah.
So, if it's in judo, and you're fighting, let's say, for example, in my category, 45 to 50, you could be fighting a fifth dan, or you could be fighting, brown belt or whatever. The range is massive.
Yeah.
That won't happen in jiu-jitsu.
No.
You'll be fighting someone your age, someone roughly your weight and roughly the same ability. And I think that's why you get a lot more people doing it.
Yeah.
And that's where they've definitely got their act together.
Absolutely.
I would say on that. Personally, I want to compete a few more times. I think I did. I started getting right into it, and then lockdown happened, and then I put 3 stone on, and the rest is history. But but yeah. The answer to do we compete? Yes and no. We do a couple more, then we've got to go home.
What advice would you give to new beginners? Keep going.
Yeah.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, never give up. It's a cliche that a black belt is a white belt that never gives up, but it's true. I've got a friend of mine, Tom, does down at RGA, and he just tells me, I just keep turning up. I keep turning up, and that's all I can do. And he's right. It's not who's best, it's who's in it the longest. So our advice, I think, is to anyone who's a new beginner, just don't give up. You'll get there in the end. Some people's journey is going to be small. Some people's journey is going to be longer. You'll get there, though, if you keep going. There's a couple that I think about coaching that I will touch on. What is it like coaching people with additional needs or special needs, as we used to call it in judo? It's very rewarding. And it's very fun, I have to be honest with you. But it's not an awful lot different than just coaching anybody else. I don't treat anybody any differently, really. And I know that's quite controversial because people always say that if you're dealing with people with special needs or additional needs, that you should be treating them according to whatever their disability is and be making allowances and stuff. And that's right, absolutely right in a lot of circumstances. But I think the reason why I don't do that in judo is that if I put barriers to what they can learn through my interpretation of what they can do, I'll never know what they can do.
Yeah.
And if you look at Henry, who comes on our class, and Henry, shout out to Henry Harding, who's got Down syndrome, and he refuses really to go on the classes that are dedicated for additional needs. He wants to train mainstream all the time, and he comes on our classes and he's training with British champions. Yeah. You've got Lewis Fryer on the mat with him, and they'll fight each other, and his next fight is against me or you or whoever. Yeah. And his range of judo is incredible. Yeah. If you look at Stanley, look what he's able to do. So we've got people at the club here at Rush Judo that absolutely enjoy the banter and the fun of being in a dedicated class for people with additional needs. And it's great for them, but we've also got people that have got additional needs that come on the mainstream class and they are doing amazing. Yeah. So what's it like coaching people with special needs? It's fun, enjoyable, but not that much different than teaching anyone else. Just make sure you've got a sense of humour. Don't have huge expectations of what can be done, but if I'm honest with you, you will be surprised at what people can do far more than you would the other way around. Yeah. Far more. What's the best thing about being a coach? We can both answer that because you are now one of our coaches here. Yep. So, I'll go with you first. What's the best thing for you about being a coach?
See, everything I kind of do is around teaching or coaching anyway, with work, with judo, with music, with all of that stuff. So,
Because it's just for anyone who doesn't know you,
I'm a driving instructor, I'm a drummer, and I'm a drum teacher, and so
you're playing a band.
Playing a band,
very good band.
So for me, I love being part of people's journey, learning stuff. There's nothing better than seeing someone learn something and do it, and know that you've helped them get to that point. And we're, I've only just started coaching judo, really. So, from a judo side, I can answer that a few more years down the line, and it's nice because I started coaching judo because during lockdown, to keep myself sane, I bought some mats and I was teaching my kids.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that kept me sane, kept them practicing, and it was really, really good for them. And then when we came back, I was like, yeah, I want to do some coaching, But I mean, from any sort of teaching thing, I mean, I've taught people of all different ages, of all different backgrounds, of all different abilities in all these different things. And just seeing when someone achieves what they're trying to do and gets better at something, knowing you've helped them to do that, I just think it's one of the most rewarding things you can do, more so than doing it yourself in a lot of ways, because helping other people, I like helping other people,
That's fair. I think for me, the best thing about being a coach, I mean, sometimes I'm really tired and I don't want to do it. You're right. It's seeing that journey. I always make a big thing about giving out a black belt, and I see kids come on this mat, and I've got all different kids come on. You've got some kids that you think they're never going to be a British champion, never. I've got other kids that walk on the mat and you think, wow, they're going to be special. But both of those categories, both of them are capable of being a black belt.
Yeah.
And I think. And I've had so many come through, and when I hand that black belt out, that means that they have. It's like a graduation at university. It means that they have stayed the course. We said earlier, didn't we? What's your advice? Never give up.
Yeah.
It just means they've never given up.
Yeah.
And I've got some real notable ones that I've handed. I mean, every single black belt I give out is important to me. I remember my first one I gave out was to Michael Fryer. And he was the first person I took from absolute beginner all the way through to black belt, and that was special. I gave Sharon, my wife, her black belt. That was special. God, every one of them are amazing. Sam Collins, he was on my very first ever judo class I ever taught. He's still with me now. God bless him.
And he's an absolute monster.
Bless his heart. And giving him his black belt, I don't know, there's so many. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell your friends. Please, leave some comments. If you've got any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. See you for the next episode.